I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Brian Wilson.
Joining us now on the line is John Parachini, Senior International Policy Analyst and Director of the Intelligence Policy Center at the RAND Corporation. He's an expert on things like biological weapons and using weapons as biological agents as weapons of mass destruction. And we thought it'd be a good day to have him, given the fact that apparently last week, in some dusty old broom closet somewhere at the NIH, they found a couple of vials of smallpox. You go, well, that's interesting. I think, John, it's also a little disturbing, is it not?
Well, it's a reminder that even scientists who are generally careful about things can make mistakes. But it is disturbing. This is probably a period in the United States history where we weren't as attentive to these types of matters in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s as we are now. But it's a reminder that there might be other places around the globe where these types of dangerous pathogens exist, where they don't have as good procedures for maintaining inventory control of them.
So these vials, we are told, were sealed up in the 1950s. Is it possible that the smallpox virus was still active?
The CDC is doing tests now. I think it's not very likely that there was a danger in the last week or so, but you never know. And mistakes have been made, and it's a reminder that with things this dangerous, we need to be very careful.
I don't mean to pick a little point, but I mean, I'm sort of curious, was the virus still active?
Well, it's not likely, given how it was stored in the last decade or so. But there's always that possibility, and I don't think anybody wants to take a chance. So it was dangerous, and it's just a reminder that mistakes get made, even in a place that's as careful as the National Institute of Health and the Food and Drug Administration.
Well, and I think Americans probably make the assumption that of all the nations in the world, we're pretty darn careful about this stuff, and we're pretty responsible. We hear that these strains are also these virus strains are also kept in Russia, and my instinct is Russia can't be nearly as careful and as judicious about this stuff as we are. What's going on over there?
What's the purpose of that?
And yeah, why are they being kept at all?
Well, it's an excellent point, and we should be concerned. Not only Russia, where we believe that smallpox is kept, and there's a treaty that allows them to keep some portions of smallpox in their research facility Vector, but there are other deadly pathogens that are in other pathogen collections around the globe. None include smallpox to the best of our knowledge, but they include other things. So this is really an opportunity, I think, for the United States to be humble and admit a mistake here, an inadvertent error, and point to ourselves that this could happen to anybody. So there's a moment to sort of set aside American exceptionalism and put the task to other countries around the globe with these types of agents to take an accounting of them as carefully as we're going to be doing now.
Well, is there a good reason to maintain, even now, a small amount of this pathogen?
Well, recently the World Health Organization engaged in a vigorous debate that really pitted researchers who want to retain some of these agents for research purposes with public health officials who see that the elimination of these reduces the chance of any inadvertent error or these types of agents falling into hands of malicious people.
Is there a positive that can come of this in terms of utilizing these existing strains of smallpox to work up some sort of an antidote or a cure, if they are ever, God forbid, used against us as a weapon?
Right. Well, that is indeed the argument that researchers make, and indeed researchers at the Center for Disease Control have made this very argument, that there are still gaps in our knowledge about how to develop effective vaccines and antiviral drugs to address an outbreak of smallpox. So that's the argument that they make. On the opposite side, indeed, D.A. Henderson, who has led the effort to eradicate smallpox, argues that it's largely been eradicated around the globe. To the best we know, it's only in two places, the United States and Russia. Now is the time to essentially eliminate this scourge from the planet.
You know, one imagines that this would be like a scene out of E.T., you know, the biosuits, the plastic. Is that what happened here when they found this?
You know, fortunately, I think reality is not as animating as television.
Well, that's a shame because it was a great image.
The movies. I think this was essentially a boring incident. That is, some sealed glass vials were found in a cardboard box in an old storage area. The good thing is that officials revealed that they had been found, they took the proper precautions, and they've made it public. We should now go the next step and actually do a thorough accounting all around our own country and indeed challenge other countries to do the same.
But one other thing, when I heard this story, you know, obviously everybody thinks, oh my gosh, you would think that this stuff is kept in a very secure place. Then, you start thinking internationally. And the biggest fear, I think, of most Americans would be things like this falling into the hands of our sworn enemies, members of some sort of radical Islamic terror group. Based on what you know about terror groups around the world and their access to governments that may or may not have these kinds of weapons, is that a fear that we should still be very concerned about?
It's a low probability event, but with potentially great consequences. So we have to put it in context. Over the last several decades, there's no question that there have been individuals or terror groups that have wanted to get weapons of mass destruction that were either poisons, disease, or radioactive. But the empirical record is that very few groups have done so. They're essentially portfolio managers. They want to harm people with lots of things, and if they have some difficulty in obtaining something like a biological agent or a nuclear weapon, they'll move to explosives. And we tragically see explosives every day of the week in one part of the globe or another. So, yes, there is the motivation, but actually obtaining the capability, fortunately, is much harder than we imagine.
Well, this is all fascinating stuff. I mean, to think that they went through a closet and found in a cardboard box something that we had thought had been eradicated and was no longer, you know, even in the environment is just quite surprising. But I'm glad to hear you say it was really sort of a boring event because it sounds a little scary.
Right. Well, we have the opportunity, I think, now to etch that image of it as a boring event and to get other countries to follow our lead in being humble about mistakes can be made, but because of the dangerous nature of these types of agents, and indeed other unconventional weapons materials, nuclear materials, paying attention and having careful accounting is really important.
Well, John Parachini, thank you for joining us and helping us understand the situation a little better. John Parachini, Senior International Policy Analyst with the RAND Corporation.
Thank you.